As John said, my name is Cliff Turner. I'm with ATB Financial, and I'm here today to kind of give a bit of a tutorial on how to use one of the tools that we've developed to help business owners, I guess, make their lives a little easier when it comes to just analyzing where their business is at. So the first thing I'll do here is start sharing my screen, and I'm not the fastest techie guy here, so bear with me. Can you guys see that okay?
We can.
Okay, perfect. If anything goes wrong there, just let me know. So the first thing I'd like to do is just find out who's in the room here. So there should be a chat button. I believe it should be down at the bottom of your screen there somewhere if you're not familiar with the platform. It'd be great if you could just throw your name in there, where you're from, and your business too. And there's two reasons for this. One is it'll help me to, as we go through this presentation, make sure I'm talking about things that'll be relevant to your businesses. But secondly, it's a great way to promote what you have going on. So feel free to throw those in there, and we'll go from there. Now, while you're doing that, I'll introduce myself because you probably want to know who's talking to you here. So I've kind of been all around the entrepreneurial ecosystem for quite a while here in Alberta, but my entrepreneurial journey kind of started in a different country. I was actually over in Lithuania from, it would have been 2009 until 2005 or so. And the work I was doing there, I wasn't necessarily an entrepreneur, but it was an entrepreneurial type role. So I was being paid by another group, but we were setting up kind of a medical mission in Lithuania. And my job was to be out in the remote areas, kind of looking for clinics and old folks' homes and orphanages and this kind of stuff that kind of fell through the cracks once Lithuania got its independence from the USSR back in the day. And so I was very much on my own, and I knew I really liked that feeling. I got to kind of create my own destiny while I was there. So when I came back to Canada and here in Alberta in 2005, I just thought, how do I keep that going? I like this feeling, right? And so I became a part of the small business ecosystem, first through real estate, but then I owned and operated two other businesses after that. One was on the consulting side using EQ, or emotional intelligence, in business. So a lot on the communications end of things. And then the second one, I made a jump to a totally different industry and ran a roofing and siding company for that would have been about 9 years, I guess. I owned that, and I sold it in 2019. And that was the last time I actually owned a business. I did jump into the corporate world after that and worked with the CFIB, so the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, which is a lobby group for small businesses at the federal level. And now I am with ATB, and I work as an entrepreneur ecosystem strategist. And so my job in this role is to kind of be a thinking partner with business owners, try to give advice where I can, but more importantly, connect business owners to resources that they can use to get ahead. So that's me, and thank you guys for putting your stuff into the chat here. So we've got JP's music, we've got another advisor with Community Futures, we've got Michelle Wright, who is in multiple businesses in the Smoky Lake region. That's cool. And then we got John, and we got someone from Calgary. So welcome everybody, and thanks for that little update on who's here with us. As I mentioned, I work with the entrepreneurial side of ATB. So we have a team that we don't actually do banking. The team that I work on, we strictly work on resources and advisory services for entrepreneurs. So that QR code that you see on the screen right now will take you to our main page. So on there, you'll see our Entrepreneur Center presence. And you'll find all kinds of good stuff there. Everything from templates that you can use, like business planning templates, cash flow forecasting templates, the tool we're going to talk about today, the small business pulse check. There's also a lot of articles, webinars that we've done in the past that have been recorded and posted on there, all kinds of different topics. So feel free to browse through there, see what applies to you, and feel free to use it. Every resource that's on that page is free to use for any Alberta-based business. You don't have to be a client of ours or anything like that. It's free for you to use. There's also a newsletter. If you scroll down to the bottom there somewhere, there's always a link where you can subscribe to our newsletter, and that'll keep you up to date on events that we're putting on, new resources that are being introduced, that kind of thing. So it'll keep you up to date. And also near the bottom there, you'll find a link to connect with a business advisor if you would like to talk in more detail about our banking services or advisory services. So you can always get in touch with a person there. If the QR code's not working for you, the address is at the bottom, atbentrepreneurcenter.com. So I'd encourage you to check that out. But what we're here to talk about today is the small business pulse check tool. So the way I like to describe this is basically think about those Fitbits and that kind of thing, the Apple Watches that they track your steps and they keep track of your pulse and this kind of stuff. And those are basically just a great way to keep a general idea of what your body's doing all day, right? I don't use one. I'm not a big tech person, but the people who do use them love them, it seems like. But the idea is they can kind of see, have I walked a lot? Am I kind of lacking in that? Has my pulse rate been really high lately? Maybe I'm stressed, or maybe my pulse rate's really low and I should check that out. But the idea is you always have that data coming in every day, giving you the general idea what your body's up to. Now, of course, if something is out of whack, if say your pulse is high, just as an example, and it's been high for several days in a row or something like this, maybe that's a sign that you go and you talk to your doctor, right? Or if it's stress, you're going to go talk to your therapist or whoever it happens to be. But you take it to the expert that has more knowledge in that area to find out what's going wrong. How do I fix this? Right? So the small business pulse check tool is very much the same concept. We designed this because we know business owners are incredibly busy. And I know it from personal experience. When I ran both of my businesses, it was like, how do I find time in the day to do everything, right? So diving into your finances and diving into your strategies on a regular basis can be hard. So we thought, how do we build something where you could invest maybe an hour and a half a month to just kind of run over some key indicators and then use that as your Fitbit, watch those trends and see where they're pointing you. So that's what we're going to go over today. The QR code on this screen will take you directly to the tool itself. So if you use that QR code, you'll see an article describing how to use it. And in that article, there'll be a link to the actual tool itself, which is basically a spreadsheet, which I'll run you through here in just a minute. There's three parts of it. The first part is financial, the second part is strategic, and the third part is operational. Now, we're going to focus today because we only have about an hour. We'll focus on the financial part because it's probably the one that needs the most instruction on how to use. The other two, it's just some simple questions that you can probably run through without too much guidance. No problem there. So we'll focus on the financial part. We'll take a few questions at the end of it to see how it might fit for you. If there's time, I'll review the strategic and operational parts as well. But like I say, we'll focus on the financial. Now, when you use this tool, it's making a few assumptions about you and your business. And these are the assumptions right here. So one is it assumes that you have some written down goals and a vision for your business. This especially comes into play with the strategic part. It's a way to basically have a star to guide your ship, something that you're always aiming for, right? This tool assumes that you have that. And if you don't, I'd encourage you to do it. Secondly, it assumes that you have some bookkeeping software that you're using and you're keeping it up to date every month. If you don't keep that up to date or if you don't have it, it'll be hard to use this tool. And that could be anything from, the typical QuickBooks. I think that's about what 90% of business owners use. And then there's Sage, Wave Accounting. Maybe you have an Excel spreadsheet that you've created, whatever it happens to be. But this assumes that you're keeping it up to date. And third, it assumes that you have a team of experts around you that you have regular meetings with as well. So just about all the time, there's an accountant involved on your team. Maybe there's a marketing person, a business coach, a legal expert, whatever it happens to be for your situation. But it assumes that you have those people in place so that if your Fitbit goes off, you have a doctor to go talk to about the details. So that's what we're assuming going forward. Now, what we're going to do just to make this as practical as possible is use an example. And so this is a totally fictional example that I came up with. So you'll notice that the numbers are very conveniently rounded to make the math nice and easy. It's perfect for me because I don't like doing head math. But we're going to use Diane, sorry, as our example. So this is her business. She has Diane's dinette sets, and she works out of her garage. And what she does is she builds very high quality handcrafted dinette sets. So she'll build a table and a set of chairs. She's been doing this for 2 years, so she's got some traction underneath her. She has her systems in place, and she's probably looking to grow. She typically sells her sets for around that 5,000 range. So we're just going to say every set's 5,000, even though in reality, I'm sure something like that would fluctuate. But easy math is more important right now. So 5,000 a set is what she's selling for. And right now she has one part-time employee that comes in and helps her out. So this employee makes about $2,000 a month. They're just coming in to help clean up the shop, maybe run some errands, help her hold some things when she's working on the heavy stuff, whatever it happens to be. When it comes to upholstery work for Diane, she doesn't know how to do that herself, but she has a contact in her town that does. So she subcontracts the upholstery work for the chairs out to that person. And then on top of that, she after she creates everything, she pays herself a salary of $4,000 a month, and she sticks to that. She pays herself $4,000 a month no matter what her business did that month, which I think is a good way to go. If you're managing your business, make sure that you're paying yourself regularly. I see too many business owners that are basically table scrap entrepreneurs that just take whatever falls off after the business does what it does, and that can be a hard life. So Diane pays herself $4,000 a month, and at the end of the year, she plans to take a dividend as well, depending on what kind of profit her business creates. Now, one thing that she does is to make her life simple, she makes the customer responsible for deliveries. So she does not organize deliveries for these tables. She sells it to the customer, and then they get to choose how they get delivery of that table to their house. She has some contacts that she'll refer, but she won't actually set that up or pay for it or anything like that. Currently, running her business this way, she can do 5 table sets per month at her maximum capacity, because basically it's just her with one helper part-time, right? And these things take some time. So that's capacity for her. If she does 5, she's really pushing it. She doesn't have a lot of time off. So that's the example that we're going to use, and we'll use this to plug into the pulse check tool and see how it works. So to be able to do this, we have to look at Diane's finances a little bit. So what I've done here is mocked up a profit and loss statement just for April for Diane for last year. Now, in order to use this tool, it's going to look at things monthly. So in your software, you're going to need to learn where to find the reports section, and there'll be a profit and loss statement that you can generate there. It might also be called an income statement, depending on what software you're using. But this is the statement that you'll need to pull up each month just to get the numbers here. Now, the nice thing is, to use this tool, the financial section, there's only 6 numbers you need to know, and they're quite easy to find. I've broken these 6 numbers up into 2 groups of 3. So we're going to talk about the first group first. And that's all found here on this profit and loss statement. Now, we'll run through it real quick here. So her total revenue, $20,000 in April. So she sold 4 table sets. Her cost of goods sold, so all the material that goes into actually building the tables, the wood, the fasteners, the subcontracting for the upholstery, anything to actually create the item she's selling, has cost her $8,000 for those 4 sets. So that leaves her a gross profit of $12,000. Her operating expenses, or fixed expenses, whatever you'd like to call it, so that includes her salary, the part-time person's salary. She probably has a bit of insurance. She has a small loan maybe, some marketing expenses to make sure that the word gets out there. That costs her another $7,500 a month. So that leaves her with $4,500 in profit at the end of April. And remember, she's already paid herself. So this is a good month for Diane, right? I think we'd all be pretty happy with a month like that. So this is her month that we're going to use as the example. We're going to pull those first 3 numbers out of here. So I'll just review what they are, and then we'll show you where they appear in the tool. So the first number that we're going to look at is just revenue. Now, this was probably the easiest because just about every business owner knows how much revenue they got the month before, right? That's one of those numbers that's just, it's in our brain all the time. We can be pretty accurate with that. It's good to double check, make sure you got the right number, but this is the first number we're going to look at. We're going to track this one as a dollar amount. So just a straight out dollar amount, nothing fancy here. And why we do this is just basically to start showing the trends and the consistency of the business. So as this plays out over a year, you'll start to see where the ups and downs are. Seasonality will be reflected there, when the busy seasons are, when the slow months are. Any anomalies will show up. So it's very easy to track, and it shows up really easily in the tool. So that's number 1. The second number is gross margin. So basically all this is doing is showing the value that you're getting from your cost of goods sold. So out of the material that you're buying to create whatever it is that you create. Now, depending on your business, you may have very high cost of goods sold if you're actually creating something physical. If you're doing something that's more online, more advisory in nature, you may not have cost of goods sold. There might not be an expense there. But if you do, this is a number that tracks that. And what it basically does is it just shows gross profit as a percentage. That's the simplest way to put it. Now, the reason we track this one as a percentage is twofold. One is to try to delete seasonality as much as possible, because we want to see how efficient you're being with the goods that you're buying to sell. And we want to take out the high and low seasons. So expressing it as a percentage does a pretty good job of wiping that out. But the second is it's good to be able to compare with industry norms as well. So if you can find some data within your industry, maybe in industry newspapers, newsletters, StatsCan sometimes has things like this. You can get free market research through the business link, and that can give you some of those numbers. But it's great to know what the industry norms are for your margins, because then you can compare. So if it's a bigger company comparing to a smaller company, the percentages should still fit together as far as the norms go. There'll just be more volume for the bigger company and less volume for the smaller. So it's a handy thing to track as a percentage. Now, you don't need to know the formula for gross margin because the tool does this for you. But just if anybody's curious, this is how it's calculated if you're not familiar with it already. You take your revenue and you subtract your cost of goods sold. That gives you your gross profit. Then you divide by your revenue again, multiply by 100 to express it as a percentage. So it's a fairly simple formula. But again, you don't need to know it. The tool does this for you. The third number we're going to look at is net margin. So very similar to gross margin, but now we're including all of your expenses. So we're just looking at the overall efficiency of your business as a whole. And same idea, we express it as a percentage because we want to try to factor out seasonality, and we want to be able to compare that to industry norms. And again, if you're curious, you're taking your revenue minus your cost of goods sold, same as before, but this time subtracting your fixed expenses, your operating expenses. Then again, dividing by your revenue times 100 to get the percentage. Again, this is in the tool, so you don't have to worry about actually doing this calculation. But these are the first three numbers. If we can track these three, profit, gross margin, and net margin, we can get a pretty good idea where our business is at once we do this over several months and start to see trends. So how do we get this? Let's go back to Diane here and her profit and loss statement. The only three numbers we need to generate this are her revenue, of course, because that's the first number, her cost of goods sold, and her operating expenses. So when you go in and you print out your report, these are the only three numbers you're going to need to use this tool every month. Find those three and you're good to go. So what we do with those is we plug them in. So this is the spreadsheet itself. It didn't look very good on the full screen, so I just kind of took a screenshot of a piece of it. So I hope this works for you guys. This is basically the top part of the tool. If you've already downloaded and you have it up on the screen somewhere, this is your top left-hand corner. And what we see across the top there is the months. They're just numbered so that you can start this any month you want. If you're using the tool, you can change those to be the names of the months, however you'd like to use it. But down the left-hand side there, you'll see the fields that we're looking at. And like I said before, it's only three numbers we have to input, and there they are. So under month 4 for April for Diane, $20,000 revenue, cost of goods sold of $8,000, and operating expenses of $7,500. That's all she has to put in there. And at the beginning of each month, she just puts it in for the previous month. Done. So what that does is it calculates these percentages. So that's the gross margin and the net margin that we talked about. Now, I went and I looked, like, what does a small furniture maker expect as far as margins go? And these are pretty average. So I tried to keep it as realistic as possible. So a 60% gross margin and a 22.5% net margin are pretty good for somebody who's doing what Diane does. Now, your business, it might be totally different. Every business has its own norms. Some have higher margins, some have lower margins typically. So find out what those numbers are, and that way you can kind of compare to industry standards and kind of see, am I doing better than most? Maybe I have to catch up. Am I kind of average? It's just good to know. So Diane's going along and she's plugging these numbers in every month. So she's getting her glass of wine or a cup of coffee or whatever on the 1st or 2nd of each month and looking back at the previous month, grabbing these three numbers, throwing them in here. And what happens is it expresses it all as a chart for you. And this is the part that I like because I'm kind of a visual learner. I don't like looking at strings of numbers. I'd much rather see something like this to wrap my head around it, right? So these are the charts that will be generated when you plug the numbers in. And this is Diane's example. So as you can see with both of those charts along the bottom, we've got the months. So we've got a whole year laid out for Diane here. And then up the sides, we've got the dollar amounts and the percentage amounts. On the revenue side, it's quite simple because, like I said before, we probably already know these numbers in our head, but this charts it out for us really nice. So we can see she started kind of slow in January. She ramped up. She had a little decline in June, but maybe she took a vacation, didn't want to do as much. And then she bumped it up into September, October, November there, where she was right at her maximum capacity of doing 5 sets per month, making $25,000. Probably because the holidays were coming up and people wanted to impress their friends or their families, so they're buying fancy tables, right? December, it dipped back down a little bit, but still very healthy numbers. On the gross and net margins side, we've basically got her stuff plotted out there. So the blue line is the gross margin and the yellow line is the net margin. So as you can see there, she kept her gross margin pretty much the same most of the year. It was right at that 60% up until June. Kind of went down a little bit and recovered in December. Her net margin really improved in the first half of the year, and then it tapered off a little bit and stayed kind of the same, recovered a bit in December again. So knowing what we know about Diane's business and the numbers that I've kind of crunched through with you a little bit here, I'd just like to open it up to everybody on the call and come off mute and let me know what you think. When you look at these charts, what are some assumptions you might make about her business or what she's going through or what might have happened during this year?
Well, it looks like her business is growing, right? Her revenue is growing and her costs look like they're staying, well, her margin's staying the same. So no matter, even though she's got more revenue, she's still leveled up in terms of what she's making for her net.
Yeah. Yeah, very true, right? A general growth trend there and fairly strong margin numbers, hey? Anybody else see anything in there? Or Michelle, if you have more.
I would say that in terms of revenue, we see a growth stage by month, how it is growing. And however, there we see a little bit deep in the month of 6, and but then onwards it keeps on growing, you know. So that's depict that the business is growing because all the businesses have up and downs, and which tell us the health of the business, how it's functioning.
Right on. Yeah, so true. We're going to see ups and downs in any business, right? Like if anybody had increase every single month, I'd want to know what the magic potion.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got some pretty good numbers here, right? Like this looks like a fairly healthy business in general, especially because we know that those margins fall into the industry norms for what she's doing. A couple of things I'd like to point out on here is as she's tracking this might be a month where she wants to just look at a couple of things, because in June she did sell a little bit less, but she might have meant to do that. It's middle of summer. Maybe she took a couple of weeks off, so it went down a little bit. Her gross margin stayed the same, so that's really healthy. But her net margin did dip quite significantly. But here's the cool thing. She sold in June $15,000 worth, right? Look at February and March. She also sold $15,000 those 2 months. Her net margin, the yellow line there, in February and March was, what would that be? Probably about 8% maybe. It's a little below the 10% line. But in June, she sold the same amount, but her net margin was higher. So that means she must have made some good decisions somewhere between March and June that has made her business more efficient. So even though that margin came down from, what would that month be, May, it's still higher in June than it was when she did the exact same amount of business 2 months earlier. So she's discovered some efficiencies there somewhere. So this would be a good time to look through and go, okay, why did it go down from July to June, but why is it higher than February and March, right? So it's just kind of trying to pick out some of these trends and see what the thing is. So she might have a positive thing there. Another one that I'd like to point out is just one that I see happen all the time, and it happened to me when I own businesses. It's just the way things go. They can almost be deceiving. So in September, October, and November, her revenue was the highest it's been all year. right? So when we get a ton of revenue, we like to think, man, we're rocking it. We're doing awesome. This is the best, the best months I've ever had. But when she plugs her numbers in, her margins have actually gone down. So yes, she generated more, but she's keeping less of it. So this is where she might want to ask herself some questions. The significant one here is the gross margin really dipped. It went down 20% from 60% to 40%. So that's a pretty significant decrease in the efficiency of her cost of goods sold. So this probably means that maybe her supplier raised prices and she maybe didn't pay attention, and she didn't raise her prices to counter it. Maybe she needs to renegotiate with them. It could be a bunch of different things, but by using this tool, she'd start seeing in July that it's starting to trend down and could act on it, right? So this is one that I just see it happen a lot, where people have a really great revenue period, but the margins are down. In her case, it just might be she got really busy actually building the tables and just didn't realize that she was spending some money she maybe didn't need to, or prices had gone up on her materials or something, because her head's just buried in making tables, right? It happens to the best of us. So this is the kind of thing that can be sussed out once you've got a bunch of months plugged into this tool. Now, good for Diane. She got everything recovered back in December. She took a bit of a break. She only did 4 tables, so she had some room to breathe for herself, have some time with her family around the holidays, but she got her margins back under control where she'd like them to be. All right. So that's the first 3 numbers. All we're doing is we're looking at revenue, gross margin, and net margin, and we find those by just plugging in those 3 numbers into the tool, and this gets generated for us. Now, like I say, the longer you use this tool, the more powerful it becomes. The first probably 4 to 6 months that you do it, it's just not enough data to really see any big trends. You can use those numbers to compare to industry norms and things like that and see where you're sitting. But it's when you get closer to that 6, 8, 10, 12 months of using it, you'll start to see more trends. And then as you get into 2, 3 years of using it, you'll really be able to see patterns developing and see where your positives are and where the negatives are. So that's the first 3 numbers. Remember, we're just finding these 3 numbers on the income statement, and you can go ahead and do that. Revenue, cost of goods sold, operating expenses. Trying to keep it easy peasy, right? The second part is another 3 numbers. So that part's done. The next part that we look at, these numbers are a little bit different. We probably have these numbers in our heads too. So the first one we're going to look at in this section is accounts payable. So knowing how much we owe to our suppliers and service providers and things like that. Knowing how much we have due this month. A lot of times this is top of mind too, because we like to stay on top of our bills, right? So we're asking, how much do I owe? How much do I have available to pay it? And more importantly, each month, kind of saying, am I making efficient use of the payment terms that I have available to me? So this is where you can get a bit creative. So one I like to highlight is just using the credit that's available to you in the wisest way possible. So let's use Diane as an example. Let's say her supplier that she buys her wood from gives her 60-day terms, no interest for 60 days. That way it gives her time to get that wood home, build a few tables, sell them, pay the supplier, right? So it's a nice position to be in. Let's say that she also has a credit card for her business from any of the banks. Let's pretend it's ATB, because we're the best, so can't go wrong there. But she does have a credit card, and she's very wise with that credit card, and she pays it off every single month. She pays off her full balance owing. Now, what that means is somebody pays off their credit card every single month, full balance owing. They're basically creating an interest-free loan for almost a month each billing cycle. So she could put some money on that. As long as she pays it off by the end of that cycle on time, there won't be any interest charged on it. So if she really wanted to leverage the credits that she has available to her, she could go to her supplier, buy that wood, ride it out for the whole 60 days because she doesn't owe any interest on it. So let's say she buys $5,000 worth of wood, just to have an example here. So she owes them $5,000, doesn't pay any interest for 60 days. She lets that go. On day 60, she goes into the supplier and she pays with that credit card that she's paying off every single month. So now she's created another probably 18 to 25 days of interest-free loan for that $5,000 as well. So that's giving her around that 80-day mark where she can have that money leveraged with no interest being paid. What do you think she might do with $5,000 that's in her account that she knows she has to pay it back, but she's got almost 3 months to pay it back. What creative things might she do with that $5,000? Invest. Yeah, there's a good idea. Yeah, definitely. You can put it into some kind of a short-term investment. You could invest in a marketing campaign, knowing that that'll turn into a few more tables. Leverage that money. Just because it's owed to somebody else doesn't mean you can't use it in the meantime, right? As long as you're, understanding when it does have to be paid back and playing by that game where you keep it interest free, that can be a powerful tool to use. So this is something to ask when you're looking at your accounts payable. What do you have due? Do you have money to cover it? But are you using it as efficiently as possible? Right? The second number we're going to look at is the reverse of this. So accounts receivable. How much is outstanding from customers that they owe you? And do you have some kind of a process to follow up with them to make sure that you're collecting this in a timely fashion? So again, here it's a lot of times about how you approach it. And this is something you'll ask yourself each month as well. Am I treating my accounts receivable in a way that benefits me the most? The one mistake that I see happen with small businesses, and again, I was very guilty of this when I had my business as well, is not being clear with payment terms and not really having simple ways for clients to pay. Because a lot of times bills aren't outstanding because people are trying to avoid paying you. It's outstanding because of convenience sometimes, right? So let's say Diane builds a table for somebody. It's a business in town and they wanted a new boardroom table, so they got it from her. She invoices them, and their administrative person sees it on the screen and goes, "Oh yeah, I need to deal with that." So they put a star beside it on the email, but now it gets buried in a few more emails, and they kind of forget. A couple of weeks go by, Diane sends them another email. "Hey, did you guys get that invoice?" "Oh yeah, we got that. I have to send it off to our bookkeeper who does the accounts payable." Sends it off, gets buried in theirs for a little while. Then they see it and they go, "Hey, we got to pay Diane. So I wonder how we should pay her. Like, should I call her up with a credit card number? Should I send her a check? What's the best way here? Should I send her e-transfer? Let's do e-transfer. Yeah, I'll email her and find out, what's the best way to e-transfer? What password should I use?" So they send an email. Diane loses that in her inbox for a few days. It can get pretty tricky, right? Best way to do it is just through the software that you use for your bookkeeping. There's probably an invoicing tool in there. Make sure you're using it because they're so nice. They've just got the little pay now button, and you can link it directly to your bank account, right? It cuts out so much accounts receivable. There's always going to be that situation where the person can't pay or needs some extra time or whatever. That's a different situation. But if you can make it as easy as possible to pay you, you'll find that people pay pretty darn quick, right? So do look into that for yourself. Are you making it easy for customers to pay you? So that's the second number, accounts receivable. And the third one, again, something that you probably have on the top of your mind all the time for your business anyway, is how much unallocated cash do you have on hand that you can actually use? Now, when I say unallocated, I just mean money that's actually available to you. So this doesn't include accounts that you have that you're setting aside money for taxes or payroll remittances or GST. That's outside of this. This is money that you have in your operating account that you can actually use, just knowing how much that is. And again, just asking, are you using it wisely? If you've got $75,000 just sitting in a checking account every month, it's probably not the wisest place for it to be sitting if you're not actually using it, right? That could be earning you money somewhere. So just another question to ask. But same as those first three numbers, we're just going to take these three numbers and we're going to plug them into the tool. So if you've got the tool up, this is just right below the section we were talking about before. And very simple section. We're just plugging those numbers in month by month. So we see Diane's numbers here. And again, it just builds a chart for us. Right? So this chart, it's got all three plotted out in the same graph. And again, same thing. We've got the months along the bottom and the dollar numbers up the left there. Blue line is accounts receivable. Yellow line is accounts payable. And the green line is cash on hand. So I'll ask the same question. Knowing what we know about Diane's business and what she does and how she handles things, what do you see popping out at this chart? What conclusions could we make here?
Hmm. Yeah, I would say from this chart, she's pretty much good with accounts payable not being, I mean, high all the time. Like to deplete the cash, or I mean, it looks like she has a good conditions or pretty much good conditions with the vendors, so that each month the accounts payable is not that high.
Yeah, yeah, it looks like she's being really diligent with her bills. Hey, she keeps that nice and low, and a lot of people just really like that feeling of knowing I don't owe a lot of money to people. So she's doing great in that respect. Hey,
Yeah, yeah. In terms of account receivable, we see certain months, one particular month, number 8 has a high receivables, and just what at the question should be knowing that what she gonna do for with that money, like what comes in the business, what's her next plan to use that money for.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, planning ahead when you know you've got some money hopefully coming in quickly. Yeah, yeah. Anna in the chat said it really well. She said she has liquidity, but the accounts receivable is a red flag. So very similar to what you were saying, Rahil. But that's definitely the thing, right? Like she always has a positive bank account or bank balance of unallocated cash on hand. So that's a great thing. But she does run into some struggles there around month 8, right? So this here is probably the biggest red flag on this chart if it was from Diane's point of view, because she was running along with about $15,000 in the bank. She had nobody owing her money at the end of June, but all of a sudden she has more people owing her money than she actually has access to. So if she saw that in between month 7 and 8 there, that would probably be a time to go, hey, wait a minute, something's off. The Fitbit's going beep beep beep. I don't know if Fitbits actually beep, but if they did, it would be beeping. So this might be a time to really start paying attention. What's changing? This is a pretty drastic change for both of these numbers. And then what she runs into is she's actually got down to the point where her cash threshold is still in the positive, but probably a bit below where she'd like it to be, because she actually has less cash than what she owes for that month. So for the first time in this whole year, she's getting to that point where she could end up kind of upside down. And by looking at this chart, we know the reason is because it's not that she hasn't generated money, it's she hasn't collected the money and she can't use it until she gets her hands on it. So this is the danger zone that she's in right here. Now, luckily, she's using this and she realizes, hey, I got to go out and I got to make sure I'm getting paid. So she maybe streamlines her systems a little bit, makes it easier for people to pay her, makes some awkward phone calls and, calls in these debts, and eventually gets things back on the track where she's in a position that she's more comfortable with. The accounts receivable are going down to a level that's more tolerable, and she's got more liquid cash on hand. And again, by December, she's having a great December, right? All these charts, she's back to a great spot. So by December, she's got about 22,000 in the bank. Nobody owes her money. She's collected everything, and her bills are all paid off. So that's a pretty good way to end the year. So this is what this tool can do. By the time you plot all these things out, you can start to see trajectories. Yours will look very different than Diane's. Like I say, this is just a total fictional example, but I think it gives the idea of what you can use this tool for. And remember that all of this comes from just having 6 numbers. All you need is your revenue, your cost of goods sold, your general expenses, your accounts payable, your accounts receivable, and cash on hand. If you have those 6 numbers, you can create all of this in the tool. So, like I say, the whole purpose of this was to be able to say, as business owners, how do we just kind of keep track of where we're at generally without having to commit a ton of time to figuring this out and diving into financials every month and doing a bunch of calculations. There's a lot of ratios you can use to suss out how healthy your business is. They can get complicated. If you want to pursue them, they give you great ideas. But if you're strapped for time and you're trying to run your business, this will give you that general idea. Am I on the right track? Am I going the right direction? Right? If any of these numbers start to look a bit weird, that's when you start to dig deeper. You dedicate the time, you talk to the experts and get that extra information. But this should keep you generally on top of where your business is at. So before I move on to the other sections, we've got about, 18 minutes left here, I think. Does anybody have any questions on the financial side or specifics they'd like to dig into there?
I have a question
Sure.
on the, you got basically three numbers. The cost of goods, and what was the next one?
Cost of goods sold, the revenue, and your general expenses. I'll go back
Okay.
to that slide here.
Yeah, general expenses. So
Sorry?
in her general expenses, does
Mhm.
that include her GST holdings and her taxes she's holding back and all those other numbers? Because we haven't mentioned that part at all. She's just got a little bit of money left over and she's got a lot of taxes to pay.
Yeah, definitely. No, this, I've kept the taxes out of it just because it's easier to calculate that once you know the net profit afterwards, right? So, and the GST, typically, you're separating that and just keeping it as a separate account away from your operating expenses anyway. But yeah, the corporate tax would be calculated after the net profit. So I didn't really go that far with this. This is just more to see where you're at before the taxes are taken into
That's not in her operating expenses. So out of that 4,500, she's got a lot of other stuff still to pay.
Yeah, she would have her general taxes to pay and things like that. So yeah, this doesn't include GST though. So we're only looking at what she collected on the actual items, not the tax.
Yeah.
GST would just be calculated separately and kept separately completely.
Thanks.
Yep, no problem. Anybody else have any questions? All right, well, if not, I'll scoot on to the next sections then. There's probably a way cleaner way to do this than flip through all my slides again. So like I say, the financial part is probably the most involved, where you have to sit down, get some numbers, look at charts, this kind of thing. But if you can put even an hour into this a month, that would be great. Oh, thanks, Anna. I see the comment there. I'm glad you feel it was well explained. That makes me feel good. So the next section is a strategic pulse check. So if you're looking at the tool right now, you'll just see below, it just turns into a series of questions. So there's no math to do here. There's no formulas that you need. It's just a matter of recording a few thoughts each month. So the strategic pulse, the first thing you're going to do is look at your goals and your vision. And this is why I said it assumes that you have goals and a vision. So by this, I mean you have some short-term goals where you'd like your business to be in 2 years or 5 years. Maybe it's a goal about how you'd like to serve your customers or how many customers you want. This is totally up to you, but have these recorded. And then a vision is more that grand idea for your business. Where do you ultimately want to take this? Why are you doing what you do? What do you want to accomplish? Are you trying to provide a certain lifestyle for yourself? Are you trying to change a market or maybe change the world or whatever it happens to be for you? Have that written down. And just each month, review those and ask that basic question. It's like a gut check. Am I still in alignment with these? Am I working towards these goals? Am I doing things that are maybe taking me away from these goals? And if I am, maybe it's time to rethink those things. So just a general gut check. Fairly simple, but incredibly valuable if you do it. Secondly is a SWOT analysis. This might be something that's familiar to you already, but basically SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I believe this is one of the most powerful things you can do within your business. Keep it as a living document. Keep it up on your wall if you want to. Here's an example of how to lay out a SWOT analysis. So if you're not familiar, basically what you're doing in the top two boxes, you're looking internally and saying, what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? And by my, I mean me, my business, and my employees. So you're looking internally there. What do you have that works for you? That's great. What employees bring special skills to the table? What are those strengths? But on the other side, what's maybe missing? What could be improved when you look internally for yourself, your business, and your employees? And document all those thoughts. The bottom two, opportunities and threats, is looking externally. So what opportunities are out there that you might be able to take advantage of? Maybe there's a large competitor that's shutting down, and that's going to open up some space in the market for you to get some of that market share. Maybe there's some legislative changes that are going to make it easier for you to do business somehow. Same thing on the threat side, looking externally. What's happening that might threaten your business? So maybe on the opposite, there's a large competitor coming to town, or there's a legislative change that might make it a little tougher for you to do business. Right now, of course, the giant elephant in the room is international trade and tariffs and this kind of thing. So that would definitely go in the threats column for most businesses. Maybe there's some where it would go in the opportunities, but can't think of any off the top of my head. So every month, go through this SWOT and just kind of reevaluate. Are my strengths still the same? Are the weaknesses still the same? Maybe I hired somebody new and I can take one of those weaknesses off the board and move it to the strengths. What threats are out there? Maybe you can use a threat or a strength to counteract a threat. What opportunities are out there? How do you use your strengths to capitalize on those opportunities? So just do a review of that every single month and keep that as a living document. The first time you build it, it'll probably take a while. You might need a few hours and a tall glass of wine to get it done. But once you've got it built, take 15 minutes to look at it every month and just kind of see what's changed and stay on top of it. It'll open up your mind to a lot of possibilities. So that's the second thing under the strategic pulse check. The third is just looking at your sales and marketing and asking, did you have a sales plan, which you should, and a marketing plan, and did you follow it? And if you did, what worked and what didn't work? Reevaluate on that basis. Look especially for spots where people might leave your sales and marketing process. So try to collect as much data as you can on how far along are people going in your process before they happen to drop off, a lot of them in the same spot. That's probably where you need to put a lot of focus on. If most people are coming through and buying at the end, that's awesome. But do evaluate it every month. A lot of times your marketing plan might be great for the first half of the year and it's working, and then just something changes in people's minds or the seasons or whatever, and suddenly you need to change your marketing, but you don't really know that if you're not staying on top of what's happening within your marketing plan. So that's the strategic pulse check. Super easy piece, just a matter of reflection. And then the last part is the operational pulse check. So again, no formulas here, nothing like that, just a matter of asking some questions. First of all, look through all of the equipment and digital assets that you have. Depending on your business, this could be very different. This might be trucks, this might be woodworking equipment like Diane, this might be software, whatever it happens to be for your business. But basically just asking, are these things being used to their maximum efficiency? Am I really using this to its capacity? Some things you might be able to find alternate uses for. A piece of equipment that's being used in one way could help in another process in your business, and maybe it needs to do double duty to get maximum efficiency out of it, whatever that happens to be. But the big question to ask, and I see this definitely with digital assets with a lot of people, personally and on business side, is are you actually using them? Because it's so easy to sign up for services online and apps and things like this that you're paying a few dollars for a month, and you use them for a bit and then they just sort of fade out of your brain, but you're still paying for them every month. Look for those things and just delete what you're not using. Make sure that what you do have is being used as efficiently as possible. So take that little inventory once a month. Now, very similar, and this sounds kind of cold, but I don't mean it that way. Do the same thing with the people in your business. So look through your partners and your employees and ask the question, do I have the right people in the right roles? Like, are they fulfilled? Are they feeling like they want to give their all? There's a good book out there that I'd highly recommend. If you haven't read it already, it's called Traction. It's by an author named Gino Wickman. There's actually a whole coaching process that they have. I think it's called Entrepreneur Operating System or something like that. But that's a whole other ball of wax. The book is great. If you really like the book, you might want to talk about their coaching system, but I'd say check out the book anyway. But they've got a really good process for this. And the way that he kind of puts it is, do I have the right butts in the right seats is his line. And it's they've got a chart in there that you can fill out that sort of evaluates this, makes it a bit more scientific, so it's helpful. But it's basically asking, like, the employees I have, I hired them for a reason. Are they still the right fit for what I have them doing? So not saying anybody has to go, but maybe somebody that you've hired into your company has grown over a year or two of working with you and they've developed new skills, but maybe they're not being asked to use them, or there's no opportunity for them to use them. So they're feeling like they're not being engaged as heavily as they'd like to be. Maybe you need to move them into a different position or give them some different responsibility. Maybe somebody else has had some life events happen and they just can't quite commit what they used to. They're still a great employee to have around, but maybe they need to scale back a little bit. Just thinking through these things Are the people that are with you feeling fulfilled? Are they wanting to give their all? And just as importantly, are they in alignment with your goals and your vision? Because that's where you want to take the company. Are they on board with that? Do they understand what your goals and your vision is? And do they believe in it? And do they want to be a part of it? So again, just a matter of doing a little inventory, sitting by yourself and thinking through these things. It might spark where you want to have a chat with an employee about, how can I make you feel like more of a part of the team? Is there responsibilities that you'd like to take on or change? You might want to have some of these conversations if you feel somebody's not the right butt in the right seat at the time. And then finally, doing the same thing with all your processes. So it's very wise to have as many of your processes documented as you possibly can. But and that can be a big bunch of work to get that done. But once you do have them documented, review them every month and just see, is there any problems here? Like, look through your sales and marketing, look through your delivery processes if you have those, any kind of payment processes, communication with employees, communication with customers, whatever it happens to be, and just kind of ask, are these things running as smoothly as I'd like them to? Are there bottlenecks? Are there redundancies? Are clients having to fill out the same information 3 times when they're trying to buy from me? This kind of thing, right? You can lose a lot of clients that way, and it just makes things clunky. So look through those processes each month and just ask that question. Are these as smooth as they could be? What could I do to improve them? And if you can, in the world of AI and everything now, look to automate as much as you can. It takes so much off your plate if you can find the right automation. And people just kind of are getting used to that, I think, when it comes to dealing with clients and things. They're not looking for, but I think used to dealing with a little bit of automation in processes. It just smooths things out. Once you do find ways to get them as smooth as possible, make sure you document that stuff. So when you bring new people on board, you can teach them those processes. And same thing here, you can review them every month and just make sure, is this process still working? Is there something I need to change? And that is the pulse check tool. We ran through those last bits pretty fast because we're running out of time here. But if you stay on top of all of that stuff, the financial, the strategic, and the operational questions, by the end of that couple of hours that you spend every month, so you're going to have a pretty good idea where your company is financially, where it is strategically, and how your operations are going. And again, it's the Fitbit, right? We're looking very generally at the surface level, but that's where the flags will pop up. If you need to talk to one of your experts, the doctor, call up your accountant, call up your marketing person, call up your lawyer, whoever it happens to be for that particular red flag, dig deeper. But hopefully most months you just go, hey, you know what? My business is cruising the way I want it to because I saw some things coming in the future from all of this tracking and I dealt with it early. So there's no big problem. So that's the tool. Again, we can take a couple more questions. I think we've got 5 minutes left. Is that right, John? Oh, John's muted.
Yeah, we still have 5 more minutes. Any questions, everyone?
While you're thinking of questions, the QR code's on there. The one on the left is to my LinkedIn. If you'd like to connect with me there, happy to connect. And the one on the right will take you to the Entrepreneur Center again. Rahil, you have a question.
Yeah. So first of all, I would say that this small business pulse check is absolutely great to visualize uh, what's going on in the business and to take a right action at the right time. uh, you know. And second thing is that sometimes what I see the challenges is that uh, people or maybe the business owners just rely on their annual financials, or not to make it monthly, or yeah. So that's particular challenges. That's what I see in the business owners. So do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right there, especially with the financial part. If you wait until that annual meeting with your accountant, like, that part where we saw Diane, her accounts receivable were really high and her cash was really low.
Yeah.
She spotted that cross a little bit early so she could correct it. If she hadn't been using a pulse check, she might not have even realized that was the case for another 2-3 months, which might have run her into default on a couple of her bills because she wouldn't have cash left. So yeah, I think that's 100% true. If you can stay on monthly, it'll save you a lot of headaches for sure, because you find out ahead of the problem rather than behind the problem when you talk to your accountant at the end of the year.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Any questions or thoughts they'd like to add? Oh, I saw Anna said that she just bought it. Aha, yeah, you didn't even have to pay, so that's cool. You bought it for free. That's awesome. Yeah. And yeah, if you have downloaded it and you have questions, feel free, LinkedIn, connect with me. I can walk you through anything that might not have got explained today. Or you can email me too. It's cturner@atb.com.
Uh, anyone else? Do you have any more questions?
Thank you, Anna.
Okay, so I think everyone is satisfied with this presentation. Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much, Cliff, for taking the time to present the tool. Yeah, I think it's a great tool to catch things before we go into the deep end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me here. This was a pleasure.
Okay. Yeah, and we also have two more sessions with Cliff here. One is the business resiliency in uncertain times. That would be on. Let me check my calendar. April 22, 2 to 3 p.m. and another one in May 21st. When to get a business loans and how to use them. Okay. Anything else, Cliff?
No, that was it for me. Thank you so much for having me present here, and it was great to meet you all. I hope to connect with you all on LinkedIn.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a nice day, and thank you for joining us.